pleased to have with us on the program right now Rick Ector from Rick's Firearm Academy of Detroit. Rick, good evening to you, sir.
Good evening, Cam. How are you doing this fine evening?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Man, I can't complain. I'm still breathing.
That's good. And still busy, I'm guessing, these days?
Still busy. I think I'm still waiting for the tipping point, as I like to describe it. It kicks in. There's still a significant percentage of individuals who still are entrusting their safety and their welfare to the local police department instead of exercising a little more involvement, especially considering the situation we have these days.
Well, yeah, absolutely right. I mean, as a matter of fact, I saw this story earlier today and thought, boy, all right, here's something else to talk with Rick about. WWJ reporting, News Radio 950, that the Detroit Police Department has said, we got a lot of false alarm calls, so we're not going to be responding to any alarms anymore unless there is confirmation from a human being that, in fact, there is a break-in taking place. Now, that may be, Rick, a beneficial thing for the Detroit Police Department. Ultimately, the citizens of Detroit may benefit from that as well if police are able to respond to higher priority calls. But it is just another indication, and it should serve as a reminder to folks that the police can't be everywhere. And in a place like Detroit, certainly you've got diminishing resources, which make it more difficult for the police to be anywhere, frankly, in a timely fashion.
Well, a couple of things I just want to point out about that whole deal. They first announced it, at least to my understanding, was at a town hall for the second quarter of this current year. They do a quarterly crime report to the community every quarter. And they announced it last week of June that they were looking at this program, basically elimination of a significant portion of the runs that they do for house alarms. They quoted some high rate, like anywhere from 97 to 99% of the calls being false. They actually reported out that they responded to 60,000 calls. The thing that I want to point out is just to make sure that our eyes aren't glazing over at the statistics of it all, because they did not respond to 60,000 false alarm calls.
Right.
Actually, their response to those calls may have been less than 10%. And even if 97% of them were false, that's just an indication of how many, how much crime that we really have in the city of Detroit. And here's the thing. If you're not even responding to these crime calls, then you're not coming, you're not showing up. Where are the savings? You can't complain about how many calls you're getting and then you don't send people there and then claim that, look at all the great productivity we're going to have because we're not going to send people out. I mean, you weren't responding anyway. So I'm at a loss to understand what's the big deal.
Yeah, I am too. Now, in the meantime, Rick, I understand it was a very violent weekend in Detroit, talking about 24-hour period, 15 people were shot, 6 of them fatally. So far, no arrests have been made in any of those cases.
Yeah, and here's the thing. They basically are pretty much unrelated. I mean, it's just a spate of violence. At that town hall I mentioned earlier, the last week of July, the police department pretty much characterized the spike in violence and the spike in homicides to what they attributed to alternative lifestyles or risky behavior. 172 people were murdered in the second quarter, and they're going, and the previous year, the second quarter was 151, and they're saying, okay, well, the spike was due to this risky behavior that folks are engaging in because they identified that 43 of these 172 folks that got killed in the second quarter had felony convictions in their criminal background history. So, I'm not really buying that either. I mean, it's whatever, that they want to try to float out that'll try to explain what's going on. But here's the thing. I tell folks that it's not the police that's responsible for crime, for protecting citizens from crime.
Yep.
That responsibility is all of ours. We all have the responsibility of safeguarding ourselves and safeguarding our families. There's been court case after court case in which the courts have ruled no individual is guaranteed, by their local police agency to be free of crime. That job rests upon all of us. And some people just don't understand it, or just can't wrap their minds around it, that the police are responsible for the individual safety.
Um, yeah, I gotta say, Rick. I mean, it's kind of depressing to hear you say that. Even in a city like Detroit, where crime is so bad, that it's still this is still a learning curve. People still don't understand that ultimately it is their responsibility to ensure that they can protect themselves.
Most definitely. And one of the things that, I don't want to sound like I'm beating up on the police, but, you go to these town halls and they basically just tell folks, okay, well, crime is bad and we're trying to do a lot of different things to address it. But we don't want you to resist, a violent criminal attack. Just do what they say. And you look at the stat that they threw out, it was accurate, but it was misleading because they didn't give the full picture.
Yeah.
They were saying that if you resisted, and resisted was broadly defined as challenging, running, or anything other than complying with the demands of the predator, that you faced a 25% chance of being injured. But what they didn't roll out was that if you resisted with a firearm, your rate of injury plummets to like 15, 16%. So, they do this whole, well, yeah, we respect the Second Amendment, but you know what? Don't buy a gun and don't defend yourself, and we'll take care of it.
And it's interesting that you talk about this, Rick, because our hero of the day story from last hour, the sheriff in Titus County, Texas, talked about how grateful he is for living in Texas. He said, quote, "One of the things I love about living in Texas is the Texas Castle Law. I can guarantee you," this is the sheriff talking, "I can guarantee you that if someone breaks into my house, I'm going to shoot him. I really mean what I said. If burglars don't want to get shot, then they need to stop breaking into people's homes." Now, that, Rick, that puts the onus on the criminal, on the bad
Sure
guy.
does.
Change your behavior unless you want to deal with the negative consequences, which could include being shot by an armed citizen. Imagine if that were the message that the criminals in Detroit were getting from official sources.
I think, you know what, I would love for that message to come from official sources, but, it's not. That's the reality of it. Politics at the highest level of the local police department, they report to the mayor, and they got their own anti-gun thing going. With these gun buybacks they try to roll out every year and say that, well, it's going to reduce crime. It has yet to reduce anything. Yeah, they bought 800. Well, here's that whole misnomer, bought back, right? They bought back 800 guns at their last event, but what has that done with respect to the violence that we're seeing? Absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, because look, I mean, Rick, you know this. The guns that they got at the last buyback weren't in the hands of criminals. They were in the hands, frankly, most of them were probably in the hands of wives of veterans who had passed away, who didn't know what to do with their husband's old rifle or old pistol, and thought, well, this seems like a good place to take it. Probably a lot of inoperable firearms, or pretty beat up, rusty guns that have been in people's attics, or buried away somewhere for a while. I mean, these gun buybacks don't take quote unquote guns off the street. They take guns out of attics.
Absolutely. And you know what? It's just another thing that they can say that they're doing. Deep down, they know the facts. They know that it's not going to change anything, but it gives them an opportunity to have a nice photo op with the media and say, hey, well, look, we're doing something. Or like this last few tactics they're doing, they're going to take some time from some desk-bound officers, and they're going to get them on the street 8 hours per officer. I don't know the exact number that they think that they can deploy, but people that are used to working behind a desk, they're going to throw them out onto the street probably, 10 years after they've probably been on the street, but all of a sudden they got these extra man hours out doing patrols. And, this other thing, they're now working them more hours. Bottom line, I don't think much of anything is going to change. I think it's going to get worse. And until there's a tipping point when law-abiding citizens have had enough and they realize that the police can't be everywhere and that they should look into exercising just a little bit more responsibility for their safety. Is the word is going to get out to these criminals that if you home invade, you murder, you carjack, you rape, there could be dire consequences for you.
Yep, absolutely. Hey, Rick, always great having you on the program, sir. Keep up the great work, and I hope that more and more Detroit residents are going to learn to exercise their right to keep and bear arms.
Man, thank you very much for having me on the show. And if I could indulge just one little thing.
You bet.
I got an open carry picnic that I'm doing out in Detroit at our largest park, Belle Isle, on the 28th. Just want to let folks know if you're in the Great Lakes area, I'm talking from Wisconsin, Indiana, Ohio, the UP in Michigan, go to legallyarmedindetroit.com and get information on this open carry picnic. We're going to have fun, fellowship, and eat and exercise our Second Amendment rights.
All right. Hey, Rick, thank you, sir. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Rick Ector joined us here on Cam and Company.